And then be sure to look to the right-hand side as well. There stands the Albert Memorial, opened 1 year later in 1872. That's a large bronze statue of Prince Albert in the middle. Victoria London, I think, that in the world when it comes to this ground, do they? I mean, if you guys would do that, I think that much fuss. So we are now in another borough of London, known as South Kensington, again built and developed during the 1800s to accommodate the growing population at the time, and again quite an expensive area to live. As most of West London is, this is the posh end of town. But as expensive as London might seem sometimes, we like to do some free things for you. So on the left-hand side here, folks, is the Natural History Museum, free to enter, opened in 1881, just 7 years before Jack the Ripper struck at the other end of town, so it's still a really nice end of town, you see. And inside the museum you'll find a popular dinosaur exhibition, as well as exhibits of birds, mammals, reptiles, ecology, geology, earth, space, anything the Natural Studios here, maybe David Attenborough, the world's most famous museum in the area is just round to the left, to the Natural History Museum, then it's the Science Museum. Now we enter Knightsbridge.
I like all the things outside. Everything is not raining outside. Why is everything not raining outside?
If it's not going to rain, then we can go back. Okay? Can we go back? Want to go back?
On your right is carrots.
I was there.
Yeah, on your right, Mita, you
You want to go
can
back?
see. No, it's again happening now. Again starting.
Because Papa knows that already. Papa, you know that. You know the rain is coming again. Always knows that. Papa always knows that.
And on the other side, on this side, you can see carrots. You see that little
No.
You see
Charles Henry Harrod bought his department store here to Knightsbridge in 1849, and today it's still the largest department store in Europe, covering 5 acres of space with over 330 departments found inside, selling apparently anything you could possibly want. Harrod's motto in Latin reads, "All things for all people everywhere." And they really mean it. Some strange items have been sold from Harrods over the years, including once a baby elephant called Gertie that was sold to Ronald Reagan. Lots more shopping though, it's not just Harrods. All around us now in Knightsbridge there's high labels, jewellery, watches and more. I think the most expensive area of central London would be Mayfair, opposite Green Park Station, where we started our tour. Mayfair is filled with boutique stores from the top designers of catwalk fame. It's a very popular area with A-listers, celebrities and the really wealthy. If you want something a bit more reasonable in your shopping price tag, head to Oxford Street. That's a mile and a half of high street stores, reasonably priced. Oxford Circus Underground Station will put you in the heart of the action up there. So when we get beyond the traffic lights ahead of us, we'll be arriving back to 1 Hyde Park, the most expensive block of flats I showed you earlier. So now we're going to start making our way back the way we came to return to the city of Westminster, the home of government and royalty.
And I won't come back to life.
You know, the first ever traffic light in the world was in London. It was lit by gas, and one day, eventually, it exploded. But we don't seem to have that kind of luck, I'm afraid, so we'll just have to wait this one out.
Mira, go sit back
Yeah, what do
again.
you know that we don't know?
I tried before, not ground, and I won't come to life again.
Why?
Because
Descending on the chariot of war. On the left-hand side, there's a rather ugly looking wall, but if you can see to the top and through the trees, you might see a pretty walking their dogs. Well, you never know, that's Buckingham Palace Garden, you see. Through there are modern buildings, often oddly shaped and nicknamed after whatever they happen to look like. Here's your first example of this strange new trend. Passing on the left, the Zigzag Building. Now let's go back in time to the year 1066, when the people of this country, the Saxons, were invaded and conquered by the Normans of France. That's when the Battle of Hastings took place on the south coast of England, where William, the invading Norman king, defeated the Saxon King Harold. So then William the Conqueror, as he became known, made his way to London. On Christmas Day 1066 he was crowned William the First of the modern kings of England. We count all of our modern kings and queens from William the Conqueror. Before him were the ancient kings, and they had names like Alfred the Great or Ethelred the Unready, someone for something, up to William the Conqueror, and then he became William the First and so on. Now, William the Conqueror was crowned ahead of us at the end of the street at Westminster Abbey. And since then, all of our kings and queens have been crowned at Westminster Abbey. Most of them are buried inside as well, with the exception of 1 or 2. Also buried inside the Abbey is a long list of historical names. Charles Dickens, Charles Darwin, Isaac Newton, Geoffrey Chaucer, the list goes on. It's also known as Edward the Confessor's Church. He was an ancient king from the 1000s who was very popular with his people. They thought he had godlike healing powers even. So when he died, he was made a saint and buried in a religious site that was here. And following that, his succeeding Saxon kings started to build the abbey around his tomb as almost like a shrine. But then the work carried on for another couple of 100 years. In front of the Abbey, passing on the right, the shorter brown building is Westminster School. Lewis Carroll was a teacher there, and he wrote Alice in Wonderland all about the headmaster's daughter, Alice Liddell, just over 155 years ago. So Westminster Abbey, passing on the right. Most of the work we see today was done during the 1200s and on the reign of Henry III. And then next we will enter Parliament Square. Ahead of us on the other side of Parliament Square is the Palace of Westminster, which was built as a royal residence in the 1200s. In the 900s. From the 1200s it became a seat of government in this country. But in 1834 a fire burnt most of that palace down. So they rebuilt it in the Gothic style. And now it's what we call the Houses of Parliament. Although still officially called the Palace of Westminster. And what you may know as Big Ben, coming up on the right ahead of us now, is not called Big Ben. It never has been. It's the Queen Elizabeth Clock Tower. Big Ben is the nickname of the great bell inside the clock tower. It weighs 13.7 tons, and I hear the nickname comes from a bare knuckle boxer from the 1800s who was 6'4". Big Passing on the left is Whitehall. Head up there for Trafalgar Square at the very top. On Whitehall you can find Downing Street, party central, home of the Prime Minister since the 1730s. The Royal Star Building is also on Whitehall, where you can meet the Household Cavalry from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 4 p.m. every day in their courtyard is their dismounting ceremony. Go and check it out. But now we cross Westminster Bridge, and coming up with some great views here, including over to the left, the London Eye. 450 feet tall with 32 capsules representing every borough of London. It takes half an hour to go on a full journey, giving you panoramic views. Live in style, have a champagne fight, your own bubble, have a bottle of bubbly. You can hire a pub pod now for beer and dance on your way round. You can even get married on the London Eye. You get all the way to the top, you say I do, and it's downhill from there. The big building next to the London Eye is called County Hall, a former government building, now filled with family-friendly attractions like the London Dungeon, the London Aquarium, Shrek's Adventure. There's also bowling alleys, arcades, escape rooms, food and drink, and lots more in the building. But where the London Eye stands is called the South Bank. Stretching from this bridge to Blackfriars Bridge in the City of London, the South Bank of the River Thames has been a hub of entertainment since medieval times. It's like a festival atmosphere here, filled with theatre, comedy, music, movies, and all of the arts mix in a big way, with festivals, installations, exhibitions, and performances all year round. Plus, along the South Bank, you can find permanently the National Theatre, one of the finest theatre companies in the world. Next door to them is the BFI, or the British Film Institute, where they celebrate the history of cinema. And the South Bank Centre is another series of concert and exhibition spaces, including the Hayward Gallery. The South Bank is one of my favourite areas in town. There's always something fun going on, something interesting. There might be a show, performance, installation. The street performers are great. The food and drink is amazing down here, as there's street food markets every weekend. And in that festival atmosphere, food trucks, plus permanent bars, cafes and restaurants. Great views of London as you walk along the river. Once you get to Blackfriars Bridge, you can keep walking, but up there in the city of London, they go back to the side of the river, the backside area. Keep walking up there, you'll find Shakespeare's Globe Theatre, the Tate Modern Art Gallery, and loads more. Passing on the left here, in between the buildings, is once again the London Eye, originally called the Millennium Wheel. It's only supposed to be up for 1 year at the turn of this century, but it was so popular, they kept it around. Along the South Bank, there's also a book fair under one of the bridges every day. There's a skateboard park, rides and adventure playgrounds for the kids. It's something for everyone. So if you would like to visit the South Bank, and I do recommend it, then come to Waterloo Station, the underground opening on the left, the main station coming up on the right-hand side. If you look where all the people are coming and going down to the left here, where the ferry lights lead, every weekend there's an amazing street food market just down there to the left. We'll be there all this weekend. Fantastic place to get some lunch if you're in the area. And you can get to the South Bank from down to the left there too. If you want your entertainment a bit more modern, then straight ahead of us, there's a big round glass building lit up beyond the bridge. Passing on the right shortly, it's the IMAX 3D Cinema, the largest screen in Britain. Get your Batman tickets. Now we're going to cross Waterloo Bridge, and we're going to see some great views coming up. Views that inspired the song Waterloo Sunset by the Kinks in the 1960s. If you don't know that song, well, they're just good views, take a word for it. And listen to some of the songs of the 60s, they were great. As we get round the corner in a moment, on the left-hand side of the bus, in between some buildings, we'll get a brief view of the London Eye and Big Ben right in the middle. If you want to get a photo of that, get your cameras ready now and get ready to look at the left, because we're not allowed to stop on the bridge. We will bend the rules slightly and slow down for you so you can get time for a photo, but you'll have to be fairly quick, and if you hear sirens, duck. Coming up on the left-hand side here, folks, in between the buildings we have a view of the London Eye with Big Ben right in the middle. Get your cameras ready, as we're not allowed to stop here at all. We're going to have to keep going. Don't want to get behind in the traffic now, do we? So here we are, folks, on the left-hand side, the London Eye and Big Ben in the middle. The old and new side by side, perfectly representing London these days. Over 2,000 years of history, but ever-evolving skyline. The building coming up on the right-hand side with the cubes on the roof is the National Theatre. And keep your cameras handy as we continue over Waterloo Bridge. There's going to be great views on either side of us here. Over to the left in a moment, you'll get more views of the city of Westminster. And then coming up on our right-hand side, we will get our first look at the City of London, the old Roman capital Londinium, where the Romans landed in 43 AD and stayed around. Side now, folks, that's the Royal Courts of Justice, the highest civil court in the land. But straight ahead of us, in the middle of the road, there is a dragon sitting on top of the monument to Temple Bar. So as we pass the monument and the dragon down and into the City of London, we also get to Fleet Street here, famous for the legend of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber. Passing on the right-hand side is a black and white building. That's an original Tudor building from the 1500s, but not many of those survive the Great Fire of London. Beginning on the 2nd of September 1666 in the bakery of Thomas Fariner on Wooded Lane. The Great Fire burned for 4 days and 4 nights, and 4/5 of the city was destroyed. So after that they called in Sir Christopher Wren, famous architect and scholar, charged him with redesigning the city. He designed over 50 churches in London. His masterpiece is St Paul's Cathedral, next. Passing on the left to you is an old pub, complete old Cheshire Cheese from a lantern outside, known as the Writers' Pub, because the printing press was on Fleet Street from the 1500s onwards. Not all writers like Charles Dickens, Dr. Johnson, even Mark Twain when he was in town used to go to that pub for a tipple. The old Bell Pub, passing on the right, was built by Sir Christopher Wren for the workers of St Paul's Cathedral, so that pub's been there since the late 1600s. It took 35 years to build St Paul's Cathedral, and at 365 feet tall, until recently was the tallest building here in the City of London. As such, it's a miracle it wasn't destroyed by the bombings of the Blitz during World War II, when over 1 million homes in London were bombed and destroyed, and most of this area was on fire at some point. It's amazing St Paul survived, but as it did, it was used as propaganda. The famous dome rising out of the smoke after a heavy night's bombing, that image was used in propaganda around the country to give people a sense of hope and strength. You might also recognise St Paul's Cathedral from 1981, when Prince Charles married Princess Diana here. You may recognise it from Mary Poppins, as the steps are where the old Bergman sat feeding the birds. Couplets are common, but also Mary Poppins. So Christopher Wren, the architect himself, is buried inside St Paul's Cathedral. His epitaph simply reads, "If you seek his monument, look around you." And on the left there, in front of the steps, is Queen Anne. She was monarch in 1710 when they finished building this place. You may know her as the Oscar-winning actress Olivia Colman, who became a few years ago. If you find yourselves here in your own time, folks, just down to the right-hand side is the Millennium Bridge. You can walk over that, down to the right, over the River Thames, and you'll be outside the Tate Modern Art Gallery and Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. Now, the City of London, where we are, is these days the financial heart of Britain. Monday to Friday, over 300,000 people commute to this area to work in banking and finance. But the reason this city exists in the first place is the River Thames. Historically, this city was a port serving most of the people of the country, and that's what the Romans identified. When they arrived here in 43 AD, they found people living here, old Bretonians, ancient tribes, living along the banks of the river down to the right. But the Romans saw the potential of this area, and they declared whoever controls the Thames controls the heart of Britain. By having a port here and then having the people of the country become reliant on that port for their food and goods, well, that made them reliant on the people in charge of the port, the Romans at the time. So that's what put the Romans in charge. That's what made this place the capital city. It was all about the port. Now, the Romans built a big wall around Londinium as well. That's why you get areas of London with the word gate in the title. Bishopsgate, Aldgate, Moorgate, all these areas once had gates through that Roman wall. And if you want to know some of the history around here, particularly in the City of London, look out for the clues that I mentioned earlier. The street names, the pub names. So just behind us, running left to right, is Bread Street. So that tells us where people bought and sold bread. Right now we're on Cannon Street. Cannon is an old word for candle. This is where they made all the church candles for the whole of England once upon a time. Round the corner to the left, there's also like Milk Street and Fishmonger Lane, and they can go work out what used to go on in those places. So you'll get the idea. The story of London is all around you if you just know where to look. Now, the people living in the City of London for centuries were the poor people, crammed onto the same narrow streets you can see around you as we drive, because we've got the same medieval street design we've always had. That did not change after the Great Fire of London. So these little streets were overpopulated with poor people, bad sanitation and rats everywhere, and being poor, many people couldn't read. So it's no good having a street sign telling them where to go to buy candles or milk or bread. So also look out on old buildings for little statues and details carved in, things you might have thought of as just the art and architecture of the old buildings. But quite often they're street signs for the people who couldn't read. I've got an example of this coming up now. Just beyond the buildings on the left is a street called Poultry, so that's where they used to sell chickens and geese and other such things. But as we come through the traffic lights, have a look across this modern building to the older building on the other side, coming into view in a moment actually, and halfway up the corner you'll find a statue of a boy and his goose. So if you couldn't read the street sign for Poultry, you look up there, you see that goose, and you know that's where to go and buy one. And it's still there for us to know the history. These guys downstairs, it's that old building straight over there. Have a look as we pass, halfway up the corner. So basically, you won't need me after this. You'll be able to look around London, looking at the street names, the little statues like the boy and his goose, and all these little details, and you'll know exactly what used to go on where you are. You know more than most people live here now, anyway. Sometimes the modern buildings are oddly shaped for a reason. It's not all just cheese graters and gherkins. The building on our left-hand side now, the modern building on our immediate left, is designed to look like a ship, giving a little nod to London's history as a port. Now, it doesn't look like a ship until you see it from the front, really, so if you can have a quick look back, have a look at it's got a mast and a crow's nest, and it looks like a big ship barreling towards you. Up to the left here for the Boyness Goose as well. On the right-hand side, that's Mansion House. That's the offices for the Lord Mayor of the City of London. Straight ahead of us, coming up on the left as we turn in a moment, is the Royal Exchange. A building has been there, known as the Royal Exchange, since the 1500s. This one's been here since the 1700s. That's where the royals used to go shopping. Now there's stuff for us in there. And over to the left on the corner is the Bank of England, where the gold reserves are kept. But as we drive down here, look down the streets around us. These all give you a great idea in your mind of what life was like here. Overpopulated streets like these, bad sanitation, rats everywhere in the old days. And in 1665, the fleas on the rats carried the Great Plague. And it swept through the community and population. If you were living around here back then, you might see people coughing a lot to go around strange masks. I wonder what that's like. You know what, we've got quite a lot in common with the 1600s these days. Back then they had the English Civil War. We've had Brexit, which is pretty much the same thing. They had witch hunting, we've got Twitter. They had the plague, we've had COVID, they even had lockdowns back then. But 1 year after the Great Plague, the Great Fire of London came along and burnt their houses down. They had no luck, did they? Hopefully we're going to fare a little bit better than that. Although, looking at World War III looming, I don't know if we are. Let's move on. We're going to go to some famous bridges in a moment. London Bridge is coming up next. As in the song, London Bridge is falling down. Now, many people confuse London Bridge with Tower Bridge. Tower Bridge is the famous looking bridge of London. London Bridge was the first crossing across the River Thames in the 600s, but there's been many different London bridges over the centuries. The one we've got now is a boring, regular looking concrete bridge, and it's been here since. Coming up on the left in a moment, we have just in between the buildings, the monument by Sir Christopher Wren, his monument to the Great Fire of London. 202 feet tall, passing on the left in between the buildings now. You can climb up inside it during the day, and if it laid on the floor in one direction, the tip of it went under the very spot on Pudding Lane where the Great Fire began. So here we are, this is London Bridge in front of us. As we cross over to the left, you'll get a great view of Tower Bridge. And also, for some of you, coming into view ahead of us will be the Shard, the tallest building in Britain, 1,020 feet high, formerly the tallest building in Europe until a few years ago. Now, just down to the left, in between these bridges, is where the port was. This is exactly where the ships were putting in from around the world for centuries. Here they would offload of their food and goods for the people, and back then this area was teeming with markets and traders, and it was known as the coming up on the left and right, there will be some dragons, which means we're going to leave the city of London when we pass them and enter the area of Borough and Southwark, where Shakespeare lived and worked. He opened up his Globe Theatre in Southwark in 1599. That's when it took place on for the public. During the 1600s, it burnt down. So we built the replica we've got now last century. Found along the banks of the River Thames. It is down to the right, but you can't see it from here, I'm afraid. If I could recommend anything around here, it would be Borough Market, which is straight ahead under the bridge on the right-hand side of the road. It goes all the way around the corner. Borough Market is a traditional food and drink marketplace that has been here since the 1200s. Fantastic atmosphere, great bars, cafes and restaurants for night or day, all around Borough Market. There's Southwark Cathedral next door to the market as well. And if you really want to get involved at Borough Market, you can try and buy the produce, and even they've got from the Shard, but you must pre-book online first. The other buildings on the left is the Bankside area. A nice walk along the river, much like the South Bank earlier. There's an amphitheatre built into the banks of the Thames along here called the Scoop. Often many shows and festivals take place there. There's also cultural and food festivals on the Bankside area all year round. But there's no sign of the docks anymore. No ports, no shipyards. It's all redeveloped now. So coming up on the left, you'll see lots of coffee shops, malls, galleries and shopping, and well, you get the idea. It is a nice area to spend some time though. Lovely places to get food and drink down. Probably, you know, the real wrong uns. Well, that would have given Charles Dickens inspiration when writing characters like Bill Sykes and Nancy from Oliver Twist and many others. Just the kind of people who would have been around here as a boy. Now at the end of the street, we're going to turn left and head over Tower Bridge itself. So get your cameras ready, folks.
Bridge in New York is older, but they themed Tower Bridge to make it look old when they built it, to fit it in with the Tower of London next door. There was also a solution to a problem. They wanted a bridge down here, but then ships still needed access to the port. That means, so it's a bascule bridge. Basically, in between the towers on the bridge, the road separates in the middle, then each side of that road lifts and leaves a big gap for large ships to come through. It still works on average once or twice a day throughout the year. If you want to see it open, Google Tower Bridge lifting. The whole schedule is online. And you can also visit inside Tower Bridge. The Tower Bridge exhibition will take you into the towers, over the traffic on the walkways, and you'll see and learn all about the inner workings and history of this most famous of London landmarks. Coming up next.
I should probably warn you, an old bus driver Albert was bringing his classic London double-decker bus this way. When he got to the middle of this bridge, it started to lift and open while his bus was still on it. So he had to put his foot down, speed up and jump the gap. But luckily he landed safely. He was awarded £10 for bravery, a lot of money in those days, but he never drove a bus again. Until today! Down to the left of the river there we have the HMS Belfast, a battleship from World War II. It fired the first shots at Normandy Beach on D-Day. It's now floating museum. You can come and explore. So we're not undercover upstairs. You can look above your heads now and see the walkways above us and the glass platforms. You can stand all up there. Of course, that's where Spider-Man defeated Mysterio. I think that was real life. Back in time now though, once again to 1066, back to William the Conqueror. When he became the first modern king of England, he built a castle on the edge of the city of London to intimidate and impress. That castle is the Tower of London coming up on the left. The first bit to be finished was the middle tower, that's the White Tower, the 4 turrets in the centre, and that was finished in 1078. And 90 foot tall, that was the tallest building in Europe in those days. The rest of the walls were built later by Richard I and Edward I. Although the toppings on the 4 middle turrets, they were put up there by Henry VIII, when his second wife Anne Boleyn moved in and lived here for some time. I guess he wanted to make the place look nice for her. Little did he know he'd have her beheaded here later on. He also had his 5th wife, Catherine Howard, beheaded here, and many other people as well. But we've grown since then, so now it's more family-friendly exhibitions, events and happenings at the Tower. The crown jewels are on display here, of course. That's the crown, the cape, the orb and sceptre, the spoon and anointing oil, and all the regalia they use in the coronation of every king and queen of this country. You'll meet the yeoman warders who guard the Tower of London when you visit. Some people, or many people, call them beefeaters, but that's an unofficial nickname and no one's quite sure where it came from originally. There's a few theories.